It was a Tuesday afternoon, the kind where the sun shines just right, making everything seem a little bit brighter. Maria, a kind woman with warm eyes and an even warmer smile, waited patiently outside Northwood Elementary. She was there to pick up Lily and Tom, two bright-eyed children who were as much her family as anyone else. Maria had been their nanny since they were little. After their parents passed away, Maria stepped up, becoming their legal guardian. She made sure they had everything they needed: healthy food, clean clothes, and, most importantly, lots of love. But this Tuesday was different. As Lily and Tom ran out of the school doors, excited to see Maria, two serious-looking men in dark jackets approached them. They spoke to Maria in stern voices, asking questions she didn't understand at first. Fear started to creep into her heart as she realized they were ICE agents. They accused her of child trafficking, a horrible crime she would never even dream of committing. Despite Maria's protests and the children's confusion, the agents put her in handcuffs. Lily and Tom, their faces etched with terror, watched as Maria was taken away. Their normal school day had turned into a terrifying nightmare, and their lives were about to change in ways they couldn't imagine. The handcuffs felt cold and tight around Maria's wrists. The ICE agents didn't explain much, just mumbled something about suspicious activity and protocol. Maria tried to tell them about the guardianship papers, locked safely in her apartment, just a few blocks away. She pleaded with them to call a lawyer, to check the records, anything to prove she wasn't a criminal. But they wouldn't listen. Lily and Tom stood frozen, tears streaming down their faces. Tom, the younger one, reached out for Maria, his small hand grasping at her skirt as the agents led her toward a dark SUV. "Maria, Maria, where are you going?" he cried. Lily, though older, was just as scared. She knew something was terribly wrong. Other parents, waiting to pick up their children, watched in stunned silence. Some whispered amongst themselves, unsure of what was happening. A few pulled out their phones, recording the scene. The flashing lights of the SUV reflected in Lily and Tom's wide, frightened eyes. Maria was pushed into the back of the vehicle. As the door slammed shut, she caught one last glimpse of Lily and Tom, standing alone and abandoned on the sidewalk. The image burned into her memory, a constant reminder of the innocent children caught in the middle of a terrible misunderstanding. The car sped away, leaving Lily and Tom to face the unknown. Back at Northwood Elementary, chaos erupted. Mrs. Davis, Lily's teacher, rushed over to the children, her face etched with concern. "Lily, Tom, what happened?" "Where's Maria?" she asked, kneeling down to their level. Lily, still sobbing, managed to stammer, They took her." The men in black. Mrs. Davis, knowing Maria well, immediately sensed something was terribly wrong. She knew Maria was a responsible and loving caregiver. Child trafficking? It seemed impossible. She quickly ushered the children inside, trying to reassure them while frantically calling the school principal and the emergency contact number listed on their files, a number that now led to Maria's unanswered phone. The principal, Mr. Thompson, arrived quickly, his brow furrowed with worry. He'd always admired Maria's dedication to Lily and Tom. He tried calling the local police, but they said ICE was handling the situation. He then contacted Child Protective Services, CPS, knowing that Lily and Tom couldn't be left alone and that Maria wouldn't want them to be without care. He explained the situation as best he could, emphasizing Maria's role as their guardian. As Lily and Tom huddled together in the principal's office, scared and confused, they wondered when Maria would come back. They didn't understand why she was taken away, or what child trafficking even meant. All they knew was that their Maria, their protector, was gone. Unbeknownst to the ICE agents, Maria wasn't just a nanny. She was family. After Lily and Tom's parents tragically died in a car accident 3 years prior, Maria had stepped up without hesitation. She navigated the complicated legal system, working tirelessly to become their legal guardian. The court recognized her unwavering commitment and officially appointed her as such. The guardianship papers, carefully filed and stamped, detailed her rights and responsibilities towards Lily and Tom. They clearly stated that she was authorized to make all decisions regarding their well-being, from medical care to education. These documents were proof of her legitimate role in their lives. Yet ICE hadn't bothered to check. This crucial detail, Maria's legal guardianship, was lost in the rush to judgment. ICE acted on suspicion, driven by preconceived notions and a lack of thorough investigation. They saw a Mexican woman picking up 2 American children and jumped to conclusions, ignoring the possibility of a perfectly legal and loving relationship. The consequences of this oversight were devastating. Lily and Tom were now in the custody of strangers, their lives disrupted by a system that failed to protect them. Maria, meanwhile, sat in a detention center, desperately trying to explain her situation, her pleas falling on deaf ears. The entire situation was a tragic misunderstanding, fueled by prejudice and a reckless disregard for due process. The arrival of the CPS workers marked a new low in this already heartbreaking situation. Lily and Tom, clinging to each other in Mr. Thompson's office, watched with wide, fearful eyes as the CPS workers approached. They didn't understand why these strangers were there, but they knew it had something to do with Maria's disappearance. "We're here to make sure you're safe," one of the CPS workers said in a gentle voice. But to Lily and Tom, safe meant being with Maria, in their own home, surrounded by familiar things. They were taken to a temporary foster home, a sterile and unfamiliar environment filled with unfamiliar faces. The house was clean and orderly, but lacked the warmth and love they were used to. They missed Maria's cooking, her bedtime stories, and her comforting hugs. That night, Lily and Tom cried themselves to sleep, their tears soaking their pillows. They longed for Maria, for the familiar scent of her perfume, for the sound of her voice. They felt lost and alone, adrift in a sea of uncertainty. The separation from Maria was more than just a change of scenery. It was a deep emotional wound. They felt abandoned, not just by Maria, but by a system that was supposed to protect them. They were victims of a terrible mistake, innocent children caught in the crosshairs of immigration policies and bureaucratic failures. The world felt cold and unsafe without Maria by their side. Meanwhile, Maria's lawyer, Ms. Rodriguez, was working tirelessly to secure her release and reunite her with Lily and Tom. She understood the urgency of the situation and knew that every minute counted. She raced to Maria's apartment, retrieved the original guardianship documents, and made countless copies. Ms. Rodriguez became a whirlwind of legal activity, faxing documents, making phone calls, and sending emails to both ICE and CPS. She argued with ICE agents who refused to acknowledge the validity of the paperwork. She pleaded with CPS caseworkers to consider the emotional trauma Lily and Tom were experiencing. She explained Maria's unwavering dedication to the children and emphasized that separating them was causing irreparable harm. The legal system, however, moved slowly. Bureaucracy and red tape seemed to stand in the way at every turn. Ms. Rodriguez faced constant delays and dismissals, but she refused to give up. She knew that Lily and Tom needed Maria, and she was determined to fight for their reunion. Days turned into an agonizing blur of legal maneuvering and emotional appeals. Ms. Rodriguez barely slept, fueled by coffee and a fierce determination to right this terrible wrong. She knew that the longer Lily and Tom remained in foster care, the deeper the scars would become. The clock was ticking, and she was running out of time. After what felt like an eternity, Ms. Rodriguez finally broke through. Days after Maria's arrest, the legal documents proving her guardianship were meticulously reviewed and verified by both IC and CPS. The court records matched the paperwork, confirming Maria's legal right to care for Lily and Tom. The news spread like wildfire. Mrs. Davis and Mr. Thompson at Northwood Elementary were overjoyed, their hope finally rekindled. Even the CPS caseworkers who had been following protocol breathed a sigh of relief. The truth had finally emerged, cutting through the layers of suspicion and misinformation. But the victory was bittersweet. The verification came too late. Lily and Tom had already spent several nights in a strange and unfamiliar environment, their emotional well-being severely compromised. Maria had endured days of wrongful detention, her reputation tarnished by baseless accusations. The documents, once ignored, now held the power to undo the damage. But the scars of separation would remain, a constant reminder of the injustice they had suffered. While the legal battle was nearing its end, the emotional healing was just beginning. The emergence of the evidence was a crucial step, but it was only the first step on a long and difficult road to recovery. The case of Maria, Lily, and Tom exposed a glaring flaw in ICE's procedures, a failure to verify crucial information before taking drastic action. Why hadn't ICE checked Maria's background, her relationship to the children, or the existence of any legal documentation before arresting her? The answer, it seemed, lay in a system that prioritized speed and enforcement over due diligence and human rights. This wasn't just a simple mistake. It was a systemic problem. ICE's protocols appeared to encourage snap judgments based on appearances, rather than thorough investigations. The agency's focus on immigration enforcement seemed to overshadow its responsibility to uphold the law and protect innocent individuals. Questions arose about ICE's training, its oversight mechanisms, and its accountability. Were agents properly trained to identify valid guardianship arrangements? Were there sufficient checks and balances in place to prevent wrongful detentions? Who was responsible for ensuring that ICE acted within the bounds of the law? The incident raised serious concerns about the potential for abuse and the erosion of civil liberties. If ICE could detain a legal guardian without proper verification, what other injustices were being committed in the name of immigration enforcement? The story served as a stark reminder of the importance of due process and the dangers of unchecked power. It demanded a critical examination of ICE's practices and a commitment to reform. The emotional scars of this ordeal ran deep. For Maria, the arrest was not only humiliating but deeply traumatizing. Accused of a crime she would never commit, she felt helpless and alone in the detention center, constantly worrying about Lily and Tom. The fear that she might never see them again haunted her days and nights. She replayed the scene at the school over and over in her mind, wishing she could have done something differently. Lily and Tom fared no better. The foster home, though clean and well-maintained, felt cold and impersonal. They missed Maria's warmth, her laughter, and her unwavering support. They had nightmares about the men in black and the flashing lights of the SUV. They struggled to understand why Maria had been taken away and when she would come back. The separation triggered feelings of abandonment and insecurity. They became withdrawn and quiet, losing interest in their favorite activities. Their grades slipped, and they had difficulty concentrating in school. The trauma of the experience left them feeling vulnerable and afraid, casting a long shadow over their young lives. The emotional toll extended beyond Maria and the children. Mrs. Davis and Mr. Thompson, who had witnessed the arrest firsthand, felt guilt and helplessness. They wondered if they could have done more to prevent the separation. The entire community was shaken by the incident, questioning the fairness and humanity of the immigration system. The news of Maria's arrest and the separation of Lily and Tom spread quickly through the community and soon reached the national news. The story resonated deeply with people from all walks of life, sparking widespread public outrage and a heated debate about ICE's practices and family separation policies. Social media exploded with condemnation of ICE's actions. People shared Lily and Tom's story, using hashtags like #JusticeForMaria and #FamiliesBelongTogether. Online petitions demanding Maria's immediate release and a review of ICE's protocols garnered thousands of signatures. News outlets ran stories highlighting the human cost of ICE's policies, emphasizing the emotional trauma inflicted on innocent children. Legal experts weighed in, questioning the legality of Maria's detention and the agency's failure to follow due process. Protests erupted outside ICE detention centers and government buildings. Demonstrators carried signs with slogans like "Stop Family Separation" and "Verify Before You Act." They chanted slogans demanding justice for Maria and calling for an end to ICE's heavy-handed tactics. The incident became a rallying cry for immigration reform advocates, who argued that Maria's case was just one example of a larger pattern of abuse and discrimination. They called for comprehensive immigration reform that would prioritize family unity and protect the rights of vulnerable individuals. The public outcry forced lawmakers to take notice, prompting calls for congressional hearings and investigations into ICE's practices. The day Maria was released from detention and reunited with Lily and Tom was filled with a mixture of joy and relief. The children ran to her, their small arms wrapping tightly around her legs. Maria knelt down, hugging them fiercely, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." The reunion was a powerful moment, captured by news cameras and shared around the world. It symbolized hope and resilience, a victory over injustice. But beneath the surface, the trauma remained. Lily and Tom clung to Maria, afraid to let her out of their sight. They had difficulty sleeping alone, haunted by nightmares. They became anxious and clingy, constantly seeking reassurance that Maria would never leave them again. Maria, too, struggled to cope with the aftermath of the ordeal. She felt guilty for what had happened, even though she was not at fault. She worried about the long-term impact of the separation on Lily and Tom's emotional well-being. The family began attending therapy sessions to help them process their trauma and rebuild their sense of security. It was a long and difficult journey, but they were determined to heal and move forward together. The reunification was a beginning, not an end. The healing process would take time, patience, and unwavering love. The invisible wounds left by the separation would serve as a constant reminder of the importance of fighting for justice and protecting the rights of vulnerable families. Following the reunification, Ms. Rodriguez began exploring the possibility of legal action against ICE. She believed that Maria and the children had grounds for a lawsuit based on wrongful detention, negligence, and the infliction of emotional distress. A lawsuit against ICE could seek financial compensation for the harm Maria and the children had suffered, including Maria's lost wages, the cost of therapy, and the emotional trauma they had all experienced. It could also serve as a deterrent, sending a message to ICE that its actions had consequences and that it would be held accountable for its mistakes. The legal battle, however, would be long and arduous. ICE had significant resources and legal defenses at its disposal. Proving negligence and demonstrating the extent of the emotional damage would require extensive documentation and expert testimony. Despite the challenges, Ms. Rodriguez believed that pursuing legal action was essential. It was not just about seeking compensation for Maria and the children. It was about holding ICE accountable for its actions and preventing similar injustices from happening in the future. A successful lawsuit could force ICE to reform its practices, implement better training programs, and establish more robust oversight mechanisms. It could also empower other victims of ICE's misconduct to come forward and seek justice. The legal aftermath of Maria's case had the potential to bring about meaningful change and protect the rights of vulnerable individuals and families. Maria and Lily and Tom's story became a powerful symbol, a call to action for ICE reform and more humane immigration enforcement practices. It highlighted the urgent need for change within the agency, demanding a shift away from policies that prioritize enforcement over human rights and family unity. The incident served as a wake-up call, urging lawmakers to pass legislation that would ensure greater oversight and accountability within ICE. It called for the implementation of stricter protocols for verifying information before taking drastic action, protecting innocent individuals from wrongful detention and separation from their families. The story also emphasized the importance of providing adequate training to ICE agents, equipping them with the skills and knowledge to handle complex situations with sensitivity and respect. It called for a greater emphasis on cultural competency and an understanding of diverse family structures. Beyond legislative reforms, the story inspired individuals and organizations to advocate for more humane immigration policies at the local, state, and national levels. It encouraged people to speak out against injustice, to support immigrant communities, and to demand a more compassionate and just immigration system. Maria, Lily, and Tom's experience serve as a reminder that immigration is not just about numbers and statistics. It is about real people, real families, and real lives. It was a call to action to create a society where all individuals are treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their immigration status. Maria, Lily, and Tom's story is not an isolated incident. It is a reflection of broader issues surrounding immigration, family separation, and the rights of children in the United States. It connects to the experiences of countless other families who have been torn apart by immigration enforcement policies. The story highlights the devastating impact of family separation on children, who are particularly vulnerable to the emotional and psychological trauma of being separated from their caregivers. It underscores the importance of keeping families together whenever possible and prioritizing the well-being of children in immigration proceedings. It also sheds light on the challenges faced by immigrant communities, who are often targeted by discriminatory practices and subjected to unfair treatment by law enforcement agencies. It calls for a more just and equitable immigration system that respects the rights and dignity of all individuals, regardless of their immigration status. The story raises fundamental questions about the role of government in protecting families and upholding the rights of children. It challenges us to examine our values and to ensure that our immigration policies reflect our commitment to compassion, fairness, and justice. Maria, Lily, and Tom's experience is a microcosm of larger societal issues, a reminder that immigration is not just a political debate. It is a human issue that affects real people and real families. Their story compels us to confront these issues and to work towards creating a more just and humane society for all. In reflecting on Maria, Lily, and Tom's story, the importance of due process and the devastating consequences of hasty actions become abundantly clear. The rush to judgment, the failure to verify information, and the disregard for established legal procedures had a profound and lasting impact on their lives. The story serves as a stark reminder that every individual, regardless of their immigration status, is entitled to the presumption of innocence and the right to a fair hearing. It underscores the need for law enforcement agencies to act with caution, to prioritize due diligence, and to respect the fundamental rights of all people. The consequences of ICE's hasty actions were far-reaching, extending beyond Maria and the children to their family, their community, and the broader society. The emotional trauma, the disruption of their lives, and the erosion of trust in the justice system cannot be easily undone. Maria, Lily, and Tom's story is a cautionary tale, a reminder that hasty actions can have devastating consequences and that the pursuit of justice requires patience, diligence, and an unwavering commitment to due process. It is a call to action to create a society where all individuals are treated with fairness, respect, and compassion, and where the rights of the most vulnerable are protected. Their story compels us to reflect on our values and to strive for a more just and humane world.